Hello Wargamers, I'm Evasive Ramnus, and today I want to talk about the new Wood Elves Army book. I'm very excited about this release, not only the rules but the models as well, especially the models, but I figured it'd be good to kind of give you some thoughts on the book and also share a preliminary army list with you, just to not only give that to you, but also welcome some feedback, because it's been a long time since I played fantasy real actively, and so if you have thoughts on it, I would love to hear it. All right, so what else? Army special rules. Some really cool stuff in here. Blessing of the Ancients gives you +1 to all attempts to cast in forests when you have this rule. Of course, Wood Elves get to place a Citadel forest. They specify Citadel forest a couple times in the book here, which I think is interesting, but you still get to place a forest like you would in the last edition before the game starts. Forest Spirit, it's got a little bit better, got a little bit worse maybe, I don't know. But now it has a 6-up ward save and immune to psychology, but that's against everything. It's not, it's not specific to what type of attack. So you get a 6-up ward if you're a Forest Spirit, so that's things like Dryads and Treeman. Forest Stalker does a couple of cool things too. So again, if you're in a wood, you get to shoot in an extra rank and attack in close combat in an extra rank, and then also you get to re-roll to wound rolls of 1 when making attacks in close combat. So all three of these are really putting emphasis on the wood and Wood Elves, which is pretty cool, and gives you a huge advantage if you can control the terrain and use the board to your advantage, which I think fits the fluff of the Wood Elves pretty well. 3 types of Wood Elf weaponry here have armor piercing, which is pretty cool. Everything's like death by 1,000 cuts. Armor piercing on the bows, on javelins that are carried by the Sisters of the Thorn, and by the spears that are carried by Eternal Guard and some others. The most notable thing, though, is that all these asrai longbows, it's no longer that Glade Guard longbows are something special and get +1 to strength at half range. But instead, you have these magic arrows, enchanted arrows, that count as magical attacks. And you can take them for most characters or most units that can actually take an asrai longbow. And so there's 6 different types. There's arcane bodkins, which are strength 3 volley fire, but have -3 to the armor save. There's hagbane tips, which are strength 3 armor piercing, poison attacks, volley fire. Moonfire shot, which is armor piercing, flaming attack, volley fire, but also has +1 to rolls against forces of order. And then starfire shafts are kind of the opposite, with forces of destruction. Swift shiver shards basically just double your number of shots, so you'll have to take the multiple shots penalty there, but you get twice as many. And then trueflight arrows basically remove all the to-hit penalties that you might suffer from moving or shooting through units, anything like that, long distance. So this makes you much more like the old Wood Elves, where you had a opportunity to ignore movement penalties while shooting. So all these enchanted arrows are pretty cool. In general, though, I think the big winners here are the hagbane tips, just because poisoned attacks are going to be really nice in a lot of different situations. Moonfire shot and starfire shafts are pretty tempting, just because of the flaming and the bonus to wound, but I think those are pretty situational unless you know who you're going to go up against. I wouldn't overinvest in either of those. Swift shiver shards and arcane bodkins, well, they might be pretty tempting. I think that they're you end up paying a lot more than than you necessarily want to for these things. And a lot of the time, arcane bodkins, especially if you're facing things that aren't heavily armored, isn't going to be much better than just having armor piercing or anything like that. So that might be not a very efficient choice, especially considering the cost of the enchantment. Trueflight arrows, I think, are actually really cool, and I think they offer a lot strategically to the army. And so they're definitely a winner in my book. Trueflight arrows and hagbane tips, I think, are your guys in most cases. Moving on to some of the magic. So you do get access to both high and dark magic. As was rumored, there's no more lore of Athel Lauren, just these two guys here plus the 8 in the book, which is really unprecedented how many lores you have access to, so that's pretty awesome. But the attributes on each of these are pretty darn cool, and I think the lore on the high magic is actually going to come into play really nicely if you have a wizard embedded in a unit or anything like that. Basically, whenever you cast a spell, you get basically a token that you can expend to remove a wound caused later in the game, which is pretty nice, especially if you have a wizard embedded in a unit of cavalry or something that doesn't have a lot of wounds in it. You can use that to keep the unit alive. Dark magic is kind of the opposite thing. Whenever you cast a hex, you can place a token on the target unit, and that increases the number of hits in the future. So that's pretty cool. Heirlooms, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think things like the Spirit Sword, which gives you the opportunity to really just wreck face. I think it's really cool, but not necessarily something that is going to earn its points back. The real big winners, I think, are the Bow of Lauren, of course. Being able to throw out multiple shots is great. And Hail of Doom Arrow, again, 3d6 shots. Really, you can't complain. That is a great weapon there, especially for 30 points. I mean, you're just you're getting a really good economy on that. And then something else that I think is pretty cool. Where'd it go? Here it is the Acorn of Ages. It basically allows you to increase the number of forests on the table, which if you're playing in a tournament setting or someplace where you're not going to have a complete control over the type of terrain, I think this is definitely worth your points considering the Army special rules. Yeah, it's 100 points, but it's not like it's something that you're not going to be able to use if the wizard dies or anything like that. It happens right at the beginning of the game, so it's a surefire thing. 100 points plus increasing the effectiveness of your army is pretty sweet. So the Acorn and then the classic Bow of Lauren and Hail of Doom Arrow are pretty sweet. Alright, on to the good stuff. Again, I won't go over all the entries piece by piece here. This is just going to be kind of a general overview, but a lot of the special characters here in the Lord section are really cool, but have, like Orion and Durthu, I think, are glass cannons to an extent. Orion is 600 points on top of that, which makes him really cost-intensive and not practical or allowable in a lot of lists. Erloth has a really cool rule where he can basically send his falcon out and blind a model, which does synergize well with Durthu and Treeman, but it's really situational. You only have a 1 in 6 chance of making that happen at best. So it's not very reliable. But moving on to the more generic lords, you have a Glade Lord, which is basically your old highborn. You can kit him out with all sorts of cool stuff, including those awesome arrows, but for the most part, I think he's hard to compete with The Spellweaver, which really is a standout in this army book, just because of how open all the lores of magic are. It used to be that only your Spellweaver could take life, but now they can take both the Spellweaver and the Spellsinger can take all 8 schools of magic, and then the Spellweaver just has access to high and dark magic, which is awesome. And of course you can put it on a steed and everything like that. Treeman Ancient, again, cool. Definitely tempting because you get the close combat ability of the Treeman mixed with the some of the magical ability of Spellweaver, but not quite as much. You can upgrade to level 4, as you see, but that's a lot invested into that one model, especially that it's flammable. Makes things a little tough there. And you can't hide him in a unit or anything like that. On top of that is really the problem there. So in the lore section, I do think that Spellweaver is really your best option in most cases. Moving on to heroes, Drycha has some cool abilities that allow her to move people around through the forest, webway kind of, which is neat. The sisters, man, just a powerhouse here, but points intensive and not necessarily the most economical. Glade Captain, he's going to be your BSB, and that's about it. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of use for them in close combat aside from being a BSB. If you do want to give them one of those magic items like the Spirit Sword, I think that's pretty cool. Well, actually, the Glade Captain can't take the Spirit Sword because it's above his point limit. But in general, I think they're going to be. If you're going to include them in anything beside a BSB, it's going to be more for fun than anything else. Again, the Spellsinger is pretty awesome. A good upgrade to its previous incarnation for certain, and can be mounted and can be upgraded to level 2, and it has access to all 8 lores of magic. Then we have kind of the 3 super champions: a Shadow Dancer, which is a special type of War Dancer, a Waystalker, which is a special type of Waywatcher, and a Branch Wraith, which is a special type of Dryad. All 3 of these are cool and specialized in their areas, but are weakened because of that specialization. So maybe not necessarily the most practical in a lot of situations. So again, I think the Spellsinger and the Glade Captain as a BSB are your main bets here. Moving on to core units, man, the core definitely have gotten stronger in this book. Glade Guard, again, 12 points per model, but have access to all these awesome arrows. And again, I think probably your hagbane and trueflight arrows are going to be your best bet, particularly because of the cost and what you get for that cost. I think is efficient. Dryads, oh man, the death knell, the death knell. They are no longer skirmishers, which is really too bad because they don't have access to any type of command units except for a champion, so they can't swift reform or anything like that. They're rank and file. They don't have the benefits of being skirmishers in any way, and only have that t-shirt ward save to save them from being forest spirits. So yeah, it's a tough life out there for a Dryad in this book. But their elven brothers are doing much better. Glade Riders, ambushers now again have access to these same bows as Glade Guard, and are really can bring an element of mobility and speed to your army if you want it. So definitely a cool option there. Eternal Guard, stubborn, always strikes first, plus those armor-piercing spears. Can't complain. I think these guys are a lot more viable in this book than they were previously, and the new models are just killer. So these guys are pretty sweet. So in all, I think you really can't go wrong in core units unless you really want to bring Dryads. I think that's probably going to be the only poor option in most situations. I think generally you want to stick to the pink fleshy guys for your core. Special units. Wildwood Rangers, another new addition to the book. Really darn cool models, but you know, they have leadership 9 plus have immune to psychology, which, you know, a lot of time that's going to be that's going to save you sometimes, just because there would be those times where you wouldn't want to run and you just fail that leadership test. But I don't think that actually brings that much to the table. What is interesting about them, though, is that they get additional attacks when fighting a unit that is fear-causing or terror-causing, and so they are well equipped to take out monsters. It's just getting them there and you know, making it count when they do get there is the thing. So I think they're probably worth taking in some lists, especially if you know what you're facing. But I'm still kind of out on whether these guys are really that amazing or not. War Dancers, I'm not really going to say a whole lot about them. They don't have the armor piercing rule. They do have their shadow dances again, or they have their dancing abilities, but really not a whole lot is different with the standard War Dancer. You can upgrade them to have a spear, but you know, I would generally not think War Dancers are bringing that much to the table here either. Treeman got some big changes. They're not as strong anymore. They're strength 4 now, and they got a points decrease. I think they still can fill a lot of the same roles that they did before. They're still monstrous infantry and are durable because of that, and decent in close combat for certain. But yeah, they're kind of, I don't know. They're cool, and they still bring a lot to the table, but I don't think they're necessarily as competitive as some of your other choices here. And so that's why you might not see them as much anymore, is just because they're not as good as some of the other options, but they're still pretty decent. Deepwood Scouts, you know, these are your skirmishing Glade Guard pretty much, and have the same awesome arrows again. If you want to take more scouts, if you want to be super shooty and have the scout ability, yeah, that's an option for you there. Warhawk Riders, you know, I think the problem with Warhawk Riders is they're kind of stuck in the middle between just standard cavalry and some of your monstrous creatures like a Grey Eagle. Yeah, they have some specialization with their armor piercing, always strikes first. You know, kind of the elven component of this symbiosis is tempting, but I think at the same time they lack a certain niche in some ways, and so there just might be better options for a list if you're trying to have something mobile or something that's a you know, War Machine Hunter or something like that. But very cool still, nonetheless. Just maybe not your best option. Sisters of the Thorn and Wild Riders. This is the kit that I'm in love with. It's a gorgeous kit and produces both of these models. Sisters of the Thorn, I think, is not as cool of a model as the Wild Riders, but still, it's a pretty darn cool unit. It has a 4-up ward save. They are they count as a level 2 wizard, and then have the ability to cast Curse from Lore of Beast and Shield of Thorns from Lore of Life. They also have those really cool javelins that are poisoned. So really are looking like they're a great place to put a mounted mage, and also be a strong support unit for redirecting your enemy, causing them to take dangerous terrain tests, really commanding their movement and enhancing your own unit's ability to perform. I think these guys are going to be pretty common, at least probably one unit, maybe two in a lot of different armies, but you'll probably see them in just one unit, and that's because Wild Riders are so kicking. These guys are going to hit like a truck, and just are pretty cool. They're no longer forest spirits, which is good. They're no longer immune to psychology, which means they can get out of combat if you need them to, and they can take shields. Really, these guys are awesome. I think these are going to be a staple unit in a lot of lists. Rare units, Waywatchers. Man, these guys are sweet too. At first I didn't see it, but then I'm thinking about it more, and I really do. They can either ignore armor or put out multiple shots, and I think this is really the reason why some of those arcane bodkins upgrades aren't necessarily as worth it, just because you can, if you upgrade a Glade Guard to have arcane bodkins and have -3 to armor, you can just pay a couple more points more and have Waywatchers and all the benefits with it. The Sustainable Center channel pointed that out to me very elegantly, and so I think Waywatchers are really a standout in this book. But yeah, so they have the option of either taking, or they can either shoot as ignoring armor or producing double shots. So highly versatile. I think a lot of the time you're going to see the ignores armor option being pumped out, but these guys are really a standout, and for 20 points a model, you're probably going to see a couple, one if not two units of 10 or so in each army. Great Eagles. Well, they're Great Eagles. They're still pretty cool, but now you can take them in units of more than one. They're not flying solo necessarily. You can have a flock, and that's neat. Treeman. I have a soft spot for Treeman, just because, I played Wood Elves in the 90s, and, the model then was nothing great, but I still loved it. And now with the even better model, with an amazing model, I just can't help but love this guy. He does have weaknesses, particularly in the form of being flammable and having that t-shirt ward save in addition to his scaly skin. But Tree Whack is a pretty awesome ability. And so Treeman, I think they're going to not be as competitive as you might want them to be. I think people are going to lean towards Waywatchers and Great Eagles for their rare choices. But I like Treeman. So, all right, that's the review. Let's talk about my army list real quick. All right, so for my army list, for 2,500 points, you can see the breakdown in the description below. But for Lords, I have a level 4 Spellweaver with Elven Steed, the Acorn, and Asrai longbow. I'm thinking that she's probably going to be in with the sisters, like I talked about in the review, and also I'm probably going to stick her with lore or high magic, just because I really like that attribute. I don't know, that's just kind of a preliminary thought. I'd really like to hear your feedback on what I should be sticking her with. I know a lot of people like Lore of Death, but yeah. Heroes, I have a Glade Captain with BSB, and Hail of Doom arrow, and a level 2 Spellsinger with a longbow as well. she'll go in maybe with the Eternal Guard that I have, 20 Eternal Guard with shields and a musician, who will also be joined by the BSB. I also have 2 units of 15 Glade Guard with musician and trueflight arrows, so they can be mobile, and then a unit of 10 Glade Guard with the hagbane tips. For special, 2 units of 5 Wild Riders with shields and full command, and then a unit of 5 Sisters of the Thorn. Rare, 2 Great Eagles and a unit, Treeman with strangleroot attack, and a unit of 10 Waywatchers. That rolls out to be 2492. So, yep, let me know what you think. Again, thanks for watching. If you have thoughts on the new army book, I'd love to hear it, especially because I'm a little rusty in a lot of ways. But, you know, your feedback is really appreciated. And, yeah, happy wargaming, and I will see you guys in the next video.